This is the Tree of Life, Season 30, Chapter 7. In this episode, we will be talking further about the process by which consensus shifts are preceded by synchronicity for the group. Based upon the last episode, if you imagine that there are a certain number of individuals actively sublimating at any given time, then the rate of change of consensus is determined by the frequency of that sublimation reduced by the rate of degeneration of artifacts of sublimation, where the rate of degeneration is determined by the phase flips in the bodily rhythms or cycles of the sublimators. Now, the rate of change in consensus is a crucial concept because it is linked to the behavior of the sublimators and their bodily rhythms or cycles. It is also important because we see that phase flips are compelled hierarchically through nonlinearity. That is, the rate of degeneration of an artifact of sublimation reveals the frequency of nonlinear intersections between the sublimator and other hierarchically superior subjects across domains. All of this means that hierarchical priority uses compulsion primarily to restrict the rate of change in consensus. So the question is, why would those at the top of hierarchies wish to restrict the rate of change of consensus? It can be assumed that consensus naturally shifts at a predictable pace in the absence of tautological infinite recursion. That is, in the absence of negation, there is a predictable movement to consensus, which is perturbed by negation leading to infinite recursion. We already observed that tautological infinite recursion reopens historical conflicts over what is true. Thus, it may be understandable that hierarchies, which are consolidated by common supposition or faith, would seek to undermine new recursion. For reopening historical conflicts over what is true produces actual conflict, or it produces consolidation, according to historical priority. Let me explain what I mean. Since we already observed that under hierarchical recursion, disbelief, or anti-supposition, sees multiple digital structures with distinct priority describing the same interaction. And we see that this drift sees synchronicity between the experiences of two distinct subjects, with contiguous linear experience centered around some object. And we saw that stacked perceptual experiences produce analogous objects in common priority, when there is a single digital structure describing the subjects. We see that consensus shifts would have to be preceded by duplication of structures with distinct priority, followed by consensus shifts caused by consolidation of all structures in a new way under those duplicate structures with distinct priority. Likewise, the sublimation of the subject who negates would produce by necessity a temporary increase in synchronicity group-wide, as duplicate structures form with distinct priority. This would be followed by the formation of these new structures into unified priority via supposition in the dialectical degeneration. It is this second step which causes the consensus shift and may lead to a pivoting of the entire consensus to an entirely different priority. But it may be simpler than that. A stacked perceptual experiences produce cooperation, according to some hierarchical priority. Whereas contiguous linear experiences, centered around some common object, can only produce cooperation through narrative or other forms of social sharing. That's the end of the podcast for today.